At our 3-year anniversary dinner, my billionaire husband didn't give me flowers. He gave me divorce papers and a medical test result that shattered my world. He called me a liar, a betrayer, a disease. He moved another woman into our bed that same night. She was hiding a secret far more dangerous than an affair. I had days to uncover the truth, before it was too late. What I found will haunt me forever, where we bring you the most heart-wrenching, tear-jerking, and emotionally powerful true stories that will stay with you long after you watch them. I'm Mr. James, and today, I'm sharing a story that left me speechless. A story about betrayal so deep, conspiracy so twisted, and revenge so perfect that you won't believe it actually happened. But before we begin, if you're new to our family, hit that subscribe button and turn on the notification bell so you never miss stories like this. And if you're already part of the Mr. James family, drop a comment below and let me know you're here. Let's build this community together now. Grab your tissues, because what you're about to hear will break your heart, make you angry, give you chills, and ultimately restore your faith in the strength of the human spirit. This is a story you cannot pause. Once you start, you won't be able to stop. Trust me. Let's begin. The champagne sat untouched. Sienna Vance smoothed the silk of her burgundy dress, her fingers trembling slightly as she checked her phone for the 7th time. The private dining room at Leclerc was decorated exactly how she'd requested. White roses, candlelight, their song playing softly in the background. 3 years of marriage. 3 years of loving a man who used to look at her like she hung the moon. Now he barely looked at her at all. She glanced at the time. 8:47 p.m. Caleb was 47 minutes late. The waiter hovered near the doorway, sympathy etched across his face. Sienna gave him a tight smile and waved him away. She'd been the understanding wife for 6 months now, ever since Caleb started coming home smelling like perfume that wasn't hers, ever since the late night calls he took in his study with the door locked, ever since he stopped reaching for her in the darkness of their bedroom. Her mother had warned her. These white billionaires, baby girl, they collect us like trophies. Beautiful on the arm, forgettable in the heart. Sienna had been so sure her mother was wrong. The door burst open. Caleb Sterling strode in. His 6'2" frame filling the space with an energy that made Sienna's breath catch, just like it always did. His jaw was clenched. His blue eyes, usually soft when they landed on her, were cold as January rain. Caleb, she stood, her voice barely above a whisper. You came. He didn't kiss her, didn't smile. He tossed a manila envelope onto the table between them, scattering rose petals across the white tablecloth. Open it, he said. Her hand shook as she reached for the envelope. What is this? Caleb, I planned this dinner for us. I thought maybe we could talk about. Open it. The harshness in his voice made her flinch. She pulled out the papers inside, her eyes scanning the medical letterhead, the typed words that swam before her vision until 3 letters crystallized with devastating clarity. HIV. Positive. The room tilted. This is a mistake, she whispered.
This can't be, I've never...
Don't. His voice cracked like a whip. Don't you dare lie to me, Sienna. All those tours, all those late nights in foreign cities. I trusted you. She looked up at him, tears blurring her vision. Caleb, I don't understand. I've only ever been with you. Only you. He laughed, bitter and ugly. You think I'm stupid. You think I don't know what happens on those European tours. The conductors, the violinists, the admirers throwing themselves at you. I would never.
The test doesn't lie.
He slammed his palm on the table, making the champagne flutes jump. My doctor confirmed it this morning. Someone infected me, Sienna. And there's only one person who could have done it. The words hit her like physical blows. She gripped the edge of the table, her knees threatening to give out. Get tested yourself. Please. There has to be an explanation. I love you. I would never. I already have divorce papers drawn up. His voice had gone quiet now, deadly calm. My lawyer will contact you tomorrow. I want you out of the house by the weekend. Caleb. She reached for him, but he stepped back like her touch would burn him. Please. 3 years. Doesn't that mean anything? He looked at her then, really looked at her, and for a moment she saw something flicker in his eyes. Pain. Doubt. But then his jaw hardened again, and whatever softness had been there vanished like smoke. You killed us, he said. You killed whatever we had the moment you brought this poison into our marriage. He turned and walked toward the door. I'm innocent. She called after him, her voice breaking. I swear to God, Caleb. I'm innocent. He paused at the threshold, his broad shoulders rigid. Then God help you, because I won't. The door closed behind him with a soft click that sounded like the end of the world. Sienna sank into her chair. The test results still clutched in her shaking hands. Her mind raced through every possibility, every moment of the past 6 months. The business trips Caleb had taken without her, the nights he came home late, the smell of unfamiliar perfume. And then she remembered. 2 weeks ago, she'd found a receipt in his jacket pocket. Cartier, a diamond necklace. $23,000. She'd waited for him to give it to her, thinking maybe he was planning a surprise. He never did. Her phone buzzed. A text from her best friend, Maya. Girl, did you see Elena Voss's Instagram? She's at some gala, looking like a whole meal. Sienna's fingers moved on autopilot, opening the app, searching for Elena's profile. Elena Voss, the ice, blonde socialite who'd been circling Caleb at every charity event for the past year. The one who always found reasons to touch his arm, laugh at his jokes, lean in too close during conversations. The latest post was from 30 minutes ago. Elena stood in a glittering silver gown, her pale fingers resting on the arm of a tuxedoed man whose face was just out of frame. But Sienna didn't need to see his face. She recognized the cufflinks, the ones she'd given Caleb for their first anniversary. And there, at Elena's throat, catching the camera flash like a small supernova, was a diamond necklace. Her diamond necklace, the one Caleb had bought but never given her. Sienna's breath came in short gasps. The room spun. She scrolled through Elena's other posts, her heart hammering against her ribs. There were dozens of photos. At restaurants Sienna recognized, wearing jewelry that looked expensive, designer bags that cost more than most people's rent. And in one photo from 4 months ago, barely visible in the background of a mirror selfie, was Caleb. Her phone slipped from her fingers and clattered onto the table. She'd been so focused on being the perfect wife, on not seeming jealous or insecure, that she'd missed what was happening right in front of her eyes. Caleb hadn't just had an affair. He'd replaced her. The waiter approached cautiously. Mum, is everything all right? Should I bring the check? Sienna looked up at him, mascara streaking down her brown cheeks. The test results crumpled in her fist. No, she said quietly. Everything is not all right. She stood, grabbed her purse, and walked out of Leclerc with her head high, even though her world was crumbling with every step. Outside, rain had started to fall. Sienna stood on the sidewalk, letting it soak through her expensive dress, wash away her makeup, drench her carefully styled hair. She pulled out her phone and called the one person who'd never let her down. Dr. Patricia Chen. A warm voice answered. Sienna, is that you? Patricia, her voice cracked. I need a favor. I need you to run a full panel on me. Tonight. Right now. Sienna, please. I need to know the truth. There was a pause. Come to the clinic. I'll meet you there in 20 minutes. Sienna ended the call and looked back at the restaurant, where the candles still flickered in the window of the private dining room she'd rented to celebrate love that apparently never existed. 3 years. 3 years of devotion, loyalty, sacrifice. And he'd thrown her away like garbage based on a test result without even giving her a chance to defend herself. But something about this didn't add up. Caleb was meticulous about his health. He had annual physicals, ran marathons, worked out 6 days a week. If someone had infected him, when would it have happened? How long had he been sick without knowing? The questions circled her mind like vultures as she hailed a cab. Rain dripping from her hair, her anniversary dress ruined, her marriage destroyed. She didn't know it yet, but the truth waiting for her was far worse than betrayal. It was calculated, deliberate, designed to destroy her. And the person responsible was already in her home, trying on her life like a new dress. The clinic was empty when Sienna arrived, her wet shoes squeaking against the linoleum floor. Dr. Chen met her at the door, concern etched across her features. Let's get you tested, she said gently. And then you're going to tell me everything. As the needle pierced Sienna's arm, drawing blood that would tell her whether her husband was right to hate her. She made herself a promise. If she was innocent, and she knew she was, she would find out who did this, and she would make them pay. The test would take 3 hours. Sienna sat in the waiting room, soaked and shivering, counting the seconds until she could prove Caleb wrong. She had no idea that 3 hours from now, her entire understanding of betrayal would shatter into something far more sinister. The truth was coming, and it would change everything. The results came back at 2:34 a.m. Negative. Sienna stared at the paper in Dr. Chen's hands, her mind unable to process what she was seeing. She'd spent the last 3 hours convincing herself that maybe, somehow, there'd been a mistake in her memory. Maybe she'd blacked out at a concert after party. Maybe someone had drugged her. Maybe she was the villain in this story and didn't even know it. But the paper didn't lie. She was clean. I don't understand. Sienna's voice sounded hollow in the sterile room. If I don't have it, then how did Caleb? Duck. Chen sat down beside her, her expression grave. Sienna, I need you to listen to me very carefully. Did Caleb get tested at his regular physician? I don't know. He just showed me the results and... Her voice broke. He didn't even let me explain. Who else has access to his medical records? The question hung in the air like poison gas. Sienna's mind flashed to the Instagram post. Elena's pale fingers wrapped around Caleb's arm. The necklace. The cufflinks. The way she'd smiled at the camera like she owned the world. Like she owned him. There's another woman, Sienna whispered. Elena Voss. Dr. Chen's jaw tightened. I can't discuss other patients, but I can tell you this: medical records can be falsified. Test results can be switched. If someone wanted to frame you, it wouldn't be that difficult with the right connections. Why would anyone do that? Power. Revenge. Dr. Chen squeezed her hand. You need to find out who Caleb's doctor is. You need to see the original test, not just a printed. Sienna stood abruptly, her wet dress still clinging to her skin. I need to go home. It's 3 in the morning. I don't care. She grabbed her purse and headed for the door, her mind racing. If someone had framed her, they'd done it perfectly. They'd turned Caleb against her, without giving her a chance to defend herself. They'd destroyed her marriage with a single piece of paper, and now they were probably sleeping in her bed. The thought made her stomach turn. The Sterling mansion looked different in the darkness, cold, unwelcoming, like a mausoleum instead of a home. Sienna's hands shook as she used her key, half expecting Caleb to have changed the locks already. The door opened. The house was silent, except for the tick of the grandfather clock in the foyer. Sienna slipped off her heels and moved through the shadows, her heart pounding so hard she could feel it in her throat. She climbed the curved staircase, each step careful and deliberate. The master bedroom door was closed. A sliver of light showed underneath. He was awake. Sienna pressed her ear to the door and heard voices. 2 of them. Told you it would work. A woman's voice, high and sharp. Elena. I just never thought she'd actually. Caleb's voice, thick with something that might have been guilt. Oh, please. You've wanted out for months. I just gave you the excuse you needed. Sienna's blood turned to ice. That's not fair, Caleb said, but there was no conviction in it. I loved her once. Once. Past tense. Now you love me. The sound of movement. Fabric rustling. Come back to bed, baby. Forget about her. Sienna's hand moved to the doorknob. Every instinct screamed at her to burst in, to confront them, to make Caleb look her in the eye, while his mistress wore her bathrobe and slept on her side of the bed. But something stopped her. If she played this wrong, she'd lose everything. Her home. Her reputation. Any chance of making them pay for what they'd done. She needed proof. Sienna backed away from the door, her mind crystallizing into focus. She moved down the hallway to Caleb's study, the room he'd forbidden her from entering for the past 6 months. The door was locked, but Sienna knew where he kept the spare key. She retrieved it from the false bottom of a vase in the guest room and let herself in. The study smelled like leather and expensive cologne. Sienna moved to his desk and opened his laptop. It required a password. She tried their anniversary. Wrong. She tried his mother's birthday. Wrong. Then, with a sick feeling in her stomach, she tried Elena's birthday. The screen unlocked. You bastard, she whispered. She went through his emails first, her hands shaking with rage. There were dozens from Elena, going back 7 months. Flirtatious at first, then explicit. Plans for hotel rooms. Complaints about having to see that boring wife of yours at charity events. Discussions about what they'd do once Sienna was out of the picture. But it was the email from 3 weeks ago that made Sienna's blood run cold. From Victoria Sterling to Caleb Sterling, Elena Voss. Subject, the plan. It's done. I've got the lab tech on payroll. The results will show exactly what we need them to show. Caleb gets his positive test. Sienna gets blamed, and by the time she gets her own test done, you'll have already filed for divorce. She'll look desperate and guilty trying to prove her innocence. Elena, make sure you're seen with him publicly within 48 hours of the confrontation. We need the narrative to be that he left his unfaithful wife for you, not that he's a cheater himself. And Caleb, when this is over, remember our agreement. I get the house in the Hamptons and 20% of the settlement you're saving by divorcing her for cause. Let's destroy this woman. Sienna read it 3 times, her vision blurring with tears of pure rage. Victoria Sterling, Caleb's ex-wife. The woman had smiled at their wedding, had hugged Sienna and called her the daughter I never had sent them anniversary cards and Christmas gifts. And all along, she'd been planning this. Sienna forwarded the email to her own account, then kept digging. She found medical records, Caleb's real ones. The test had been done at a private clinic owned by Victoria's brother. The results had been modified. The original showed that Caleb was negative for everything. He wasn't sick at all. This whole thing was a setup. Sienna sat back in the leather chair, her mind reeling. They'd fabricated an entire illness to frame her. They'd destroyed her marriage, her reputation, her life. For what? Sport. Cruelty. She thought about bursting into the bedroom, showing Caleb the emails, making him see what Elena and Victoria had done. But then she realized something that made her pause. Caleb had read that email. His name was on it. He knew this was a setup, and he'd gone through with it anyway. He'd chosen to believe the lie, because the lie was convenient. The truth hit her like a physical blow. Caleb hadn't been tricked. He'd been a willing participant. He'd wanted out of their marriage badly enough to destroy her in the process. Sienna stood on shaking legs and moved to the window. Dawn was breaking over the manicured lawn, turning the sky the color of a bruise. She could go to the police. She could expose them. She could. Her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Stop snooping and get out of the house, or I'll make sure you're arrested for trespassing. Yes, I can see you on the security cameras. You have 10 minutes. Vive, Victoria. Sienna's eyes flew to the small camera mounted in the corner of the study. A tiny red light blinked at her. She grabbed her phone and walked out of the study, her mind racing. She had the evidence. She had the email. But if she used it now, they'd just claim she hacked Caleb's computer, that she was a desperate woman trying to avoid the consequences of her own infidelity. She needed more. She needed to know why Victoria hated her enough to do this. She needed to understand what Elena's real game was. And most of all, she needed to figure out how to make them all pay, without destroying herself in the process. Sienna walked down the stairs, through the foyer, and out the front door of the house. She'd called home for 3 years. The morning air was crisp and cold. Birds sang in the trees. The world kept turning like nothing had changed. But everything had changed. Sienna pulled out her phone and made a call. Maya, I need your help, and I need you to not ask questions until I explain everything. Girl, it's 5 in the morning. I know. Can you come get me? There was a pause. Then, I'm already in the car. 20 minutes later. Sienna sat in Maya's apartment, wrapped in a borrowed blanket, telling her best friend everything. Maya listened without interrupting, her dark eyes growing wider with each revelation. When Sienna finished, Maya was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, "We're going to destroy them." "How?" "I don't know yet." "But we will." Maya squeezed her hand. "You're not alone in this, Sienna. Not anymore." Sienna nodded, but inside, something had shifted. The woman who'd walked into that anniversary dinner had been soft, trusting, willing to believe the best in people. That woman was gone. In her place was someone harder, sharper, someone who understood that kindness was a weakness people like Elena and Victoria exploited. Someone who was going to make them regret, ever thinking she was easy to destroy. "I need to find out more about Elena," Sienna said quietly. There's something we're missing. Why would she go to all this trouble? She's already got Caleb. Why frame me? Maybe it's not about having him. Maya said slowly. Maybe it's about making sure you lose everything. The words settled over them like a shroud. Sienna's phone buzzed again. Another unknown number. She opened the message and felt the blood drain from her face. It was a photo of her mother's house. And a text. Back off, or she's next. Sienna's hands trembled so violently she nearly dropped the phone. Her mother. They were threatening her mother. What is it? Maya leaned over to look at the screen and gasped. Oh, hell no. We're calling the police right now. And tell them what? Sienna's voice came out flat, emotionless. That my ex-husband's ex-wife sent me a picture of my mother's house. They'll say it's not a credible threat. They'll say I'm being paranoid. Then what are we going to do? Sienna stared at the photo. Her mother's small brick house in Brooklyn. The garden she'd spent 20 years cultivating. The porch where Sienna had learned to play her first cello piece. The house was dark. It was barely 6 in the morning. Her mother would be asleep, completely unaware that she'd become a pawn in someone else's twisted game. I'm going to end this, Sienna said quietly. Today. She stood and grabbed her purse. Maya caught her arm. You can't just walk into whatever trap they're setting. I'm not. Sienna pulled up Victoria Sterling's contact information. The number was still in her phone from when they used to coordinate family dinners. I'm going to give Victoria exactly what she wants. A conversation. Sienna, trust me. She dialed the number. It rang twice before a smooth, cultured voice answered. I was wondering when you'd call. Victoria sounded amused. Like this was all a delightful game. Sienna forced her voice to stay calm. Leave my mother out of this. Then stop digging where you don't belong. What do you want from me? I'm already gone. Caleb already hates me. You won. So why are you still? Because I don't just want you gone, Sienna. Victoria's voice turned sharp as a scalpel. I want you erased. I want you to disappear so completely that in 5 years, Caleb won't even remember your name. The honesty of it was almost refreshing. Why? Sienna asked. What did I ever do to you? There was a long pause. Then Victoria laughed, a brittle sound that held no humor. You want to know? Fine. Meet me at the Greystone Hotel, room 412. Come alone. If I see your little friend or anyone else, the deal's off and your mother gets a very unpleasant visit. The line went dead. Maya was shaking her head before Sienna even lowered the phone. Absolutely not. This is textbook serial killer behavior. I have to go. Then I'm coming with you. She said. I don't care what she said. I'll wait in the lobby. But I'm not letting you walk into that hotel without backup. Maya grabbed her keys. And I'm texting my cousin Marcus. He's a cop. Off duty, but still. Sienna wanted to argue, but the truth was she was terrified. Not of Victoria exactly, but of what she might learn. People didn't orchestrate elaborate schemes like this without reason. There was something deeper here, something Sienna was missing. They drove to the Greystone in tense silence. The hotel was one of those old Manhattan establishments that catered to people with inherited money and dark secrets. The lobby was all marble and gold, empty except for a bored-looking concierge. Maya squeezed Sienna's hand. 4th floor. I'll be right here. Anything feels wrong, you scream. I don't care if it's embarrassing. Sienna nodded and headed for the elevator. Room 4012 was at the end of a long, carpeted hallway. Sienna knocked. Her heart hammering against her ribs, the door opened immediately. Victoria Sterling stood there in a cream silk blouse and tailored pants, looking like she'd just stepped out of a boardroom instead of orchestrating someone's destruction. She was in her late 50s, but could pass for 40, with the kind of polished beauty that came from expensive maintenance and good genes. Sienna. "Come in." The room was a suite, tastefully decorated, with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Central Park. Victoria gestured to a sitting area where coffee and pastries were laid out on a silver tray. "I'm not here for breakfast," Sienna said. "No, you're here for answers." Victoria poured herself a cup of coffee with steady hands. "Sit down. This might take a while." Sienna remained standing. "Just tell me why you hate me so much." Victoria took a sip of her coffee, studying Sienna over the rim of the cup. Then she set it down with a soft click. "I don't hate you, dear. I hate what you represent." "I don't understand." "Of course you don't. You walked into Caleb's life like some fairy tale princess, didn't you? Beautiful, talented, cultured. The perfect trophy for a man who'd already broken one wife." Victoria's voice was calm, almost conversational. "Do you know why Caleb and I divorced?" Sienna shook her head. Caleb had always refused to talk about it, saying only that they'd grown apart. "I couldn't have children." Victoria's mask slipped for just a moment, revealing something raw underneath. "We tried for 15 years. Every treatment, every specialist, every humiliating procedure. And when it became clear that I would never give him the hair he wanted, he left me. I'm sorry, but that doesn't explain. He left me for a 23-year-old yoga instructor named Amber." Victoria's laugh was bitter. "Lasted 8 months before he got bored. Then there was Rachel, the art gallery owner. Then Sophie, the personal trainer. Then you." Sienna felt like she'd been slapped. "I didn't know about any of them." "Of course you didn't. Caleb is very good at rewriting history. By the time you met him, he was just a successful, eligible bachelor. No mention of the wife he discarded or the women he cycled through afterward." Victoria stood and walked to the window. "But you were different. You lasted 3 whole years. I started to think maybe he'd actually changed. So you decided to destroy my marriage because you're bitter about your own." Victoria turned to face her, and there was genuine pity in her eyes. "Oh, sweetheart, I didn't destroy your marriage. It was already dead. Caleb's been seeing Elena for 8 months. 8 months, not 6. Longer than Sienna had suspected. Elena came to me 6 months ago." Victoria continued. She'd done her research. She knew about me, about the divorce, about the settlement I got. She wanted advice on how to secure her own future with Caleb. And you helped her. I helped her understand that men like Caleb don't leave their wives without a reason that makes them look like the victim. He left me claiming I was unstable and obsessed with motherhood. What would be his excuse for leaving you?" The pieces were clicking into place, each one more sickening than the last. "The HIV diagnosis," Sienna whispered. "A perfect excuse. A cheating wife who brought disease into their home. He gets to be the wounded party. You get blamed for everything. And Elena gets to step in as the woman who saved him from his terrible mistake. But Caleb isn't actually sick." Victoria's smile was knife-sharp. "No, he's not. But he doesn't know that." Sienna's blood ran cold. "What did you say?" "Caleb thinks he's HIV positive. We showed him falsified test results from a clinic my brother owns. He believes Elena is the only woman selfless enough to stay with him despite his diagnosis." Victoria picked up her coffee again. "When the truth comes out, And it will. Eventually, he'll think it was all your fault. That you somehow manipulated the tests. That you're crazy and vindictive. You're going to let him think he's dying. Oh, he won't die. My brother will discover the error in a few months. But by then, you'll be completely out of the picture. And Elena will be the devoted girlfriend who stood by him through his darkest hour. Victoria tilted her head. It's actually quite elegant. Sienna felt sick. And what do you get out of this? Revenge. The word was simple. Honest. For every lonely night I spent in this city, while Caleb built his empire. For every pitying look from our friends. When they found out, he'd left me. For every year I gave him, only to be replaced by younger, prettier versions. I'm not responsible for what Caleb did to you, but you benefited from it. Victoria's eyes hardened. You got the ring, the house, the life I built. You got 3 years of playing princess in my castle. So yes, Sienna, I want you erased. I want Caleb to forget you existed. And when Elena eventually bores him, and he moves on to the next one, I want you to have been the cautionary tale. The wife who destroyed him. Sienna's hands clenched into fists. You're insane. I'm strategic. Victoria set down her cup. Now, are we done here? I've told you everything. You have no proof. This entire conversation could be a figment of your imagination for all anyone else knows. And if you try to expose me, I have lawyers who will bury you in litigation until you're bankrupt. What about Elena? Sienna asked quietly. What's her real angle in all this? Victoria's smile faltered. What do you mean? You said she came to you for advice. But Elena's family has money. She doesn't need Caleb's fortune. So why go through all this trouble? For the first time, Victoria looked uncertain. I assumed she was in love with him. You assumed. Sienna took a step closer. But you don't actually know, do you? You don't know anything about her except what she's told you. Victoria's jaw tightened. Elena Voss comes from old money. Her family is broke. The voice came from the doorway. Both women spun around. A man stood there, lean and weathered, with salt and pepper hair and eyes that had seen too much. He wore a rumpled suit and held up a badge. Detective James Morrison, NYPD Financial Crimes Unit. He stepped into the room. And I've been investigating Elena Voss for the past 18 months. Sienna's heart stopped. Who are you? Someone who's been waiting for the right moment to move on Elena. And thanks to you ladies, I think that moment just arrived. He pulled out a tablet and turned it to face them. Elena Voss. Real name. Elena Volkov. Daughter of Russian oligarch Dmitry Volkov, who lost everything in sanctions 5 years ago. She's been running cons on wealthy men up and down the East Coast, infecting them with HIV, then suing for damages. The room seemed to tilt. Victoria's face had gone white. That's impossible. She's got a playbook. Morrison swiped through photos. At least 7 men in the past 3 years. She gets close, infects them, manipulates the timeline to make it look like they infected her, then settles out of court for millions. The men are too embarrassed to fight back, too ashamed. They pay her to go away. Sienna couldn't breathe. Caleb as her next target, and you were the obstacle. Morrison looked at her with something like sympathy. She needed you gone so she could swoop in, play the devoted girlfriend, and then discover she'd been infected. She'd sue Caleb for everything he has, but Caleb's test was fake, Sienna said. He's not actually. The fake test was just to get rid of you. Victoria helped with that part, probably thinking she was just helping Elena secure her future with Caleb. Morrison turned to Victoria. You didn't know Elena was going to infect him for real, did you? Victoria's coffee cup slipped from her fingers and shattered on the floor.
Oh my God,
She whispered. What have I done? Morrison pulled out handcuffs. Victoria Sterling, you're under arrest for conspiracy to commit fraud. And wait. Sienna stepped forward. Don't arrest her yet. Morrison raised an eyebrow. Excuse me. If you arrest Victoria now, Elena will know something's wrong. She'll disappear, and Caleb will actually get sick. Sienna's mind was racing. We need to catch Elena in the act. And to do that, we need Victoria's help. Victoria looked at her with wide, terrified eyes. You want my help? After everything I've done to you, I want to save Caleb's life. Sienna's voice was steady, even though inside she felt like screaming. And I want Elena to pay for what she's done to those other men. To all of us? Morrison studied her for a long moment. Then he nodded slowly. What did you have in mind? Sienna turned to Victoria. How long until Elena expects the fake diagnosis to be corrected? 6 weeks. My brother was supposed to call and say there'd been a mix-up with the lab samples. So we have 6 weeks to catch her. Sienna pulled out her phone. Detective, what do you need to make a case? Evidence of her knowingly transmitting the virus. Proof of intent to defraud. And ideally, a confession. Then we'll get you all 3. Sienna looked at Victoria. But you're going to help. And when this is over, you're going to confess everything you did to me. To Caleb. To everyone. Victoria's hands shook. He'll never forgive me. He shouldn't. But maybe if you help save his life, you can live with yourself. Sienna's voice was hard. Do we have a deal? Victoria looked at the broken coffee cup. On the floor. At the detective, waiting for her answer. At Sienna standing tall despite everything that had been done to her. We have a deal, she whispered. Morrison put away the handcuffs. Then let's get to work. Because if Elena follows her usual pattern, she's going to make her move soon. And when she does, we need to be ready. Sienna pulled out her phone and texted Maya, still alive. And you won't believe what I just found out. Esh. The response came immediately. Marcus is here. Tell me everything. As Sienna began to explain the plan forming in her mind, she caught her reflection in the suite's mirror. She looked different, harder. The soft, trusting woman who'd planned an anniversary dinner was gone. In her place stood someone who'd learned that sometimes you had to play the game to win. And Sienna was about to play it better than Elena ever could. 3 days later, Sienna sat in a rental car across from the Sterling mansion, watching Elena Voss move through the house like she owned it. Because in her mind, she probably did. Detective Morrison sat in the passenger seat, sipping terrible coffee from a thermos. He'd been surprisingly easy to work with once Victoria started cooperating. Turned out, a woman facing federal fraud charges was highly motivated to save herself. She's moving fast, Morrison observed. Usually takes her targets at least 3 months to fully trust her. She's only been public with Caleb for a week. She doesn't need his trust anymore, Sienna said quietly. She has his vulnerability. A man who thinks he's dying is easy to manipulate. Her phone buzzed. A text from Victoria. He's getting worse. Headaches, fatigue. I think she's already started his. Sienna's stomach clenched. Morrison. How quickly can HIV symptoms appear after transmission? Depends on the viral load and the method of transmission. Could be 2 weeks, could 2 months. He set down his coffee. Why? Victoria says Caleb's showing symptoms. Morrison swore under his breath. Then we need to move faster. If she's already infected him, We don't know that for sure. Could be stress. Could be psychosomatic. But even as Sienna said it, she didn't believe it. Elena was too calculated, too experienced. She wouldn't wait. Another text from Victoria. She's asking him to update his will. Says she wants to make sure she's taken care of in case something happens. She's going for the kill. Morrison muttered. Classic pattern. Get him to change his will, then either wait for the disease to progress or help it along. Sienna's blood ran cold. Help it along how? Some of her previous targets died of complications. Nothing that could be directly traced back to her, but convenient timing nonetheless. He pulled out his tablet. Jeffrey Hammond, 52, died of pneumonia 6 months after his diagnosis. Left Elena $3 million in his will. Marcus Chen, 47. Stroke, left her his penthouse and another $2 million. Should I go on? She's killing them. The words came out as a whisper. We can't prove it. The autopsies were clean, but HIV patients are vulnerable to infections, complications. Easy to nudge someone toward the grave if you know what you're doing. Sienna's hands gripped the steering wheel. She thought about Caleb, arrogant, unfaithful Caleb who'd thrown her away like trash. She should hate him. She did hate him, but she didn't want him dead. We need to get him away from her, she said. Can't. The moment we tip our hand, she'll vanish. We've been chasing her for 18 months, and every time we get close, she disappears. New name, new city, new target. Morrison shook his head. We get one shot at this. We have to catch her red-handed. Then we need to speed up her timeline. Make her sloppy. How? Sienna was already pulling up her phone, opening a burner email account she'd created for exactly this purpose. Victoria said, Elena's family lost everything, right? That she's desperate for money. Desperate enough to kill for it, apparently. Then let's give her something to be more desperate about. Sienna typed quickly, crafting an email to Lena from a fake law firm. Dear Ms. Voss, we represent the estate of Jeffrey Hammond. Recent irregularities have been discovered in Mr. Hammond's will, and we are conducting a full investigation into the circumstances of his death and the beneficiaries of his estate. We request your presence at our offices within 7 days to answer questions regarding your relationship with the deceased. Failure to comply may result in legal action and the freezing of all assets transferred from Mr. Hammond's estate. She showed it to Morrison. He read it and whistled low. That'll light a fire under her, but it might also make her run. She won't run. Not when she's this close to the biggest payday of her career. Sienna hit send. Caleb's worth 10 times what her other targets were. She's not leaving without his money. Morrison's phone buzzed. He answered, listened, then his expression darkened. Say that again. Sienna watched his face go pale. We're on our way. He ended the call and turned to her. That was my partner. Elena just purchased a large quantity of immunosuppressant drugs from a black market pharmacy. The kind that would make a healthy person extremely vulnerable to infection. She's going to make him sicker. Worse. If Caleb actually has HIV, which we still don't know for sure, and she gives him those drugs, his immune system will collapse. He could die within weeks. Sienna was already starting the car. Where is she now? Still in the house. But, Sienna, we can't just burst in there without a warrant. Anything we find would be inadmissible. I don't care about admissible. I care about keeping Caleb alive long enough for you to build your case. She pulled out her phone and called Victoria. The woman answered on the first ring. I need you to get Caleb out of that house,
Sienna said.
now. I can't just... Victoria. Elena bought drugs that could kill him. If you ever loved him, if you ever cared about him at all, you will get him out of there in the next 10 minutes. There was a pause. Then, I'll call him. Tell him I need to see him. That it's about our divorce settlement. Make it convincing. Sienna hung up and turned to Morrison. How long do we have? If she's following her pattern, she'll dose him tonight. Make it look like he took vitamins or supplements. By morning, he'll be too weak to resist. Then we have until tonight to stop her. Morrison looked at her with grudging respect. You know, for a cellist. You think like a cop. I've had a very educational week. They watched the mansion. 10 minutes later, Caleb emerged, looking thinner than Sienna remembered. His usual confidence replaced with something that looked like fear. He got into his Tesla and drove away. Elena appeared in the doorway, watching him go. Even from a distance, Sienna could see the irritation on her perfect face. She's calling him, Morrison said, pointing to Elena pressing her phone to her ear. Sienna's phone buzzed. Victoria. He's not answering her. Good sign. Now what? Morrison asked. Now we see what she does when her plan starts falling apart. They didn't have to wait long. Elena stormed back into the house. 5 minutes later, she emerged with a designer bag and got into her white Mercedes. She drove fast, weaving through traffic with the kind of recklessness that spoke to panic. Morrison radioed his partner to follow her while they stayed on the mansion. Where do you think she's going? Sienna asked. Either to wherever Caleb is, or to grab whatever evidence she's stored and run. He pulled up a tracking app on his tablet. We put a GPS on her car yesterday. Let's see. They watched the red dot move through Manhattan, heading downtown. It stopped at a storage facility in Queens. Bingo, Morrison breathed. She's got a storage unit. That's where she'll keep anything incriminating. Can you get a warrant? For a storage unit. Based on what evidence? A hunch. He shook his head. We need more. Sienna was already getting out of the car. What are you doing? Morrison called after her. Getting you more. She walked up to the mansion's front door and used the key she technically still had. The house was silent, empty. Elena had left in such a hurry she hadn't even locked the bedroom door. Sienna climbed the stairs, her heart pounding. She told herself this was about justice, about saving Caleb, about stopping a killer. But part of her, a dark, ugly part she didn't want to acknowledge, wanted to see where Elena had been sleeping. Wanted to see how thoroughly she'd been replaced. The master bedroom looked different. The walls were the same. The furniture was the same, but everything else had changed. Elena's clothes hung in the closet, where Sienna's had been. Her perfume sat on the vanity. Her jewelry sparkled on the dresser. And there, on the nightstand, was a prescription bottle. Sienna picked it up. Cyclosporine, an immunosuppressant. Prescribed to Caleb Sterling, by a doctor Sienna had never heard of. She took a photo and sent it to Morrison, then kept searching. In the bathroom she found more medications. Some legitimate, some she didn't recognize. And in the trash, half buried under tissues, she found a positive HIV test with Caleb's name on it. Except this one looked real. Not like the fake one Victoria had shown him. Sienna's hands shook as she photographed it. If this was real, then Caleb actually was infected. Elena had actually done it. She heard a car in the driveway. Sienna froze. Elena was back. She shoved the test result back in the trash and ran for the bedroom door. But she was too late. Footsteps on the stairs. Fast, angry footsteps. Sienna looked around wildly. The closet. She dove inside, pulling the door almost closed, leaving just enough crack to see through. Elena burst into the room, phone pressed to her ear. "I don't care what you have to do. Find him," she snarled in an accent that wasn't quite American. Russian, maybe. The polished, socialite mask had slipped completely. "If he talks to Victoria before I can fix this, everything falls apart." A pause. "No, I already dosed him this morning. Put it in his coffee. He should be feeling the effects by tonight." Another pause. "Because I need him weak enough to sign the new will, but not so weak that he goes to a hospital. You idiot." Sienna bit her lip to keep from gasping. Elena paced the room. "The Hammond family is asking questions. We need to close this deal with Sterling and disappear." "I'm thinking Switzerland. Maybe the Caymans." She listened to whoever was on the other end. "My brother will handle the body once the time comes. He did fine with Hammond and Chen. Sterling will just be another tragic case of AIDS-related complications." She laughed, cold and sharp. "The man's already convinced he's dying. Half my work is done." Sienna's phone buzzed in her pocket. The sound was barely audible, but in the silent room it might as well have been a gunshot. Elena's head snapped toward the closet. "I'll call you back." She ended the call and walked slowly toward the closet door, her heels clicking on the hardwood floor. Sienna's heart hammered so hard she thought it might break through her ribs. She had nowhere to go. No weapon. Nothing but her phone and the photos she'd taken. The closet door swung open. Elena stood there, backlit by the bedroom lights, beautiful and terrible. "Well," she said softly, "isn't this interesting?" For a moment, neither woman moved. Elena's ice blue eyes studied Sienna with the cold calculation of a predator deciding whether its prey was worth the effort. Then, slowly, she smiled. "Sienna Sterling. Or is it just Sienna Vance now? I can never remember how these things work after a divorce." Sienna stepped out of the closet, forcing herself to stand tall, even though every instinct screamed at her to run. "You need to stay away from Caleb." Elena laughed, a sound like breaking glass. "Or what? You'll tell him his devoted girlfriend is actually a con artist, that his ex-wife helped frame you." She tilted her head. "Who do you think he'll believe? The woman he threw away like garbage, or the woman who's been holding his hand through his darkest hour? I have proof. Proof. What? That I love expensive jewelry, that I take medication." Elena's smile widened. "You broke into this house, Sienna. You're trespassing. I could have you arrested right now." "Go ahead. Call the police." Sienna pulled out her phone.
I'll wait.
Elena's smile faltered. "What game are you playing?" "The same one you are. Except I'm better at it." For the first time, uncertainty flickered across Elena's perfect features. She moved to the nightstand and picked up her own phone, her finger hovering over the screen. "I wouldn't do that if I were you," Sienna said quietly. "The moment you call the cops, this conversation becomes official. And I have a very interesting recording of what you just said about dosing Caleb's coffee and planning to dispose of his body." Elena's face went white. Her eyes darted to Sienna's phone. "That's right," Sienna continued. "Voice memo. Started recording the moment I heard you coming up the stairs. Every word. Every confession about Jeffrey Hammond and Marcus Chen. All of it. It was a bluff. Sienna hadn't thought to record anything, but Elena didn't know that. Elena's hand dropped to her side. What do you want? I want you to leave Caleb alone. And if I don't, then I send this recording to the police, to the Hammond family, to every news outlet in New York. Sienna took a step closer. How long do you think it'll take before they connect you to those other deaths? Before they start exhuming bodies and running new toxicology reports? Elena's jaw clenched. You're bluffing. Am I? Sienna held up her phone. Want to find out? They stared at each other across the bedroom. Two women who'd loved the same man for very different reasons. Then Elena did something Sienna didn't expect. She sat down on the bed and laughed. Not the brittle, sharp laugh from before, but something genuine, almost admiring. You know what? I underestimated you. Elena looked up at Sienna with something that might have been respect. Victoria said you were soft, easy to break. But you're not, are you? Not anymore. Elena studied her for a long moment. How much do you want? Excuse me. To make this go away. To delete that recording and forget you ever heard anything. Elena opened her designer purse and pulled out a checkbook. Name your price. 500,000. $1 million. Sienna felt sick. You think I want money? Everyone wants money. That's the one thing I've learned in this business. Elena clicked her pen. 2 million. Final offer. You take it, disappear, and I'll make sure Caleb never knows you were here. I don't want your blood money. Then what do you want? Revenge? Is that it? Elena's eyes glittered. You want to see me arrested? Want to watch Caleb realize he chose the wrong woman? I want him to live. The words hung in the air between them. Elena's expression shifted, something almost like pity crossing her face. You still love him. After everything he did to you, you still love him. I love the man I thought he was, Sienna said quietly. And I won't let you kill him just because he was too stupid to see what you really are. Elena set down the checkbook. Then we have a problem, because I've already dosed him. Already started the process. And even if I wanted to stop, which I don't, it's too late. What are you talking about? The medications I gave him this morning will suppress his immune system for the next 72 hours. If he's exposed to certain infections during that window, infections I've carefully cultivated, his body won't be able to fight them off. Elena's voice was clinical, detached. But this time next week, he'll be in the ICU. By the end of the month, he'll be dead. You're insane. I'm practical. Elena stood and walked to the window, looking out at the manicured lawn. Do you know what it's like to have everything and then lose it? To go from penthouses and private jets to sleeping in a studio apartment in Queens and pretending to be impressed by men who think Olive Garden is fine dining. That doesn't give you the right to. My father was one of the richest men in Russia. We had estates, yachts, artwork worth millions. Then the sanctions came, and overnight, we had nothing. Elena's reflection in the window was cold, hard. I watched my mother sell her jewelry, piece by piece, just to pay rent. I watched my father drink himself to death because he couldn't handle being poor. I'm sorry, but I swore I would never be poor again. never be helpless again. So I did what I had to do. Elena turned to face her. Those men I killed. They were already dying. I just helped them along and made sure their money went somewhere useful. Useful? You mean to you? Ooh, better. Their children didn't need it. Their ex-wives already got their settlements. But me, I needed it to survive. Sienna stared at this woman who'd destroyed her life, who was planning to murder her ex-husband, and felt something unexpected. Not pity exactly, but understanding. There's another way, Sienna said slowly. You don't have to do this. Elena laughed. Oh, here comes the rehabilitation speech. Let me guess. I should turn myself in, serve my time, start over with a clean slate. No, you should disappear. Right now. Tonight. Elena's eyebrows rose. And leave all of Caleb's money on the table. You leave with your life and your freedom. Because if you don't, Detective Morrison from the NYPD, Financial Crimes Unit, is going to arrest you. Sienna pulled out her phone and showed Elena the text thread with Morrison. He's been investigating you for 18 months. He knows about Hammond, Chen, all of them. The only reason he hasn't arrested you yet is because he's been waiting for you to make a mistake. Elena's face went pale. You're working with the police? I am now. You can't prove anything. I've been careful. You just confessed to murder. On a recording. Sienna held up her phone again. And before you claim I'm bluffing, know that Detective Morrison is parked across the street right now, listening to every word through the wire I'm wearing. It was another bluff. Sienna wasn't wearing a wire, but Elena's composure cracked completely. You manipulative little... The bedroom door burst open. Morrison stood there, his badge out, his expression grim. Behind him were two uniformed officers. Elena Volkov. You're under arrest for conspiracy to commit murder, fraud, and about a dozen other charges my DA is going to love reading to you. Elena's eyes darted between Sienna and Morrison, calculating. Then, faster than anyone expected, she grabbed a glass vase from the dresser and hurled it at Morrison. He ducked. The vase shattered against the doorframe. Elena bolted for the window. She's running! One of the officers shouted. But Elena wasn't trying to escape through the window. She was reaching for something on the sill, a small black device that looked like a garage door opener. Morrison, stop her! Sienna screamed. Morrison lunged. But Elena was faster. She pressed the button. Nothing happened. Elena pressed it again, frantically, her face contorted with rage and fear. Looking for this. A new voice came from the hallway. Victoria Sterling stood there, holding an identical black device. I disconnected your little insurance policy an hour ago. Elena's face went from pale to ashen. What did you do? I disabled the gas line you had installed in Caleb's study. The one you were planning to trigger remotely to make his death look like an accident. Victoria's voice was cold. Did you really think I wouldn't notice? You paying off my security team. That I wouldn't have my own people watching you. Morrison was already cuffing Elena. Elena Volkov, you have the right to remain silent. I want my lawyer! Elena shrieked.
You can't prove anything.
That recording is illegal. I was coerced. Actually. Morrison said cheerfully, Ms. Sterling here was wearing a wire, and she consented to being recorded. And everything you said about dosing Caleb, about Hammond and Chen, about the gas line, All of it is admissible. Sienna looked at Victoria in shock. You were wired. Victoria lifted her silk blouse slightly, revealing a small microphone taped to her ribs. I told you. I want to make this right. Elena struggled against the handcuffs as the officers began to lead her away. Caleb will never forgive you, she screamed at Victoria. Either of you! He'll hate you for this! Probably, Victoria said quietly. But he'll be alive to hate us. The officers dragged Elena down the stairs, her screams echoing through the mansion. Morrison turned to Sienna and Victoria. We need to find Caleb. If she dosed him this morning, we need to get him to a hospital and flush whatever she gave him out of his system. He's at my lawyer's office downtown, Victoria said. I told him I needed to discuss the settlement. He should still be there. Sienna was already heading for the door. Then let's go. They piled into Morrison's unmarked car, Victoria in the back, Sienna in front. As they pulled away from the mansion, Sienna caught a glimpse of neighbors gathering on their lawns, phones out, filming the police cars and the screaming woman being loaded into the back of a cruiser. By tomorrow, this would be all over the news. The drive downtown took 20 minutes that felt like 20 hours. Morrison called ahead to the hospital, arranging for a team to be ready. Victoria sat in the back seat, silent, her hands folded in her lap. Finally she spoke. Sienna. Sienna didn't turn around. What? Thank you. For stopping me before I went too far. For including me in the plan instead of just turning me in. Don't thank me yet. Morrison still deciding whether to charge you. I deserve whatever comes. Victoria's voice was soft. What I did to you was unforgivable. Yes, it was. But for what it's worth, I am sorry, truly. Sienna finally looked back at her. Victoria Sterling? The woman who'd orchestrated her destruction, who'd helped frame her for infidelity, who'd nearly gotten Caleb killed, looked small and broken in the back seat. You're going to tell him everything, Sienna said. Every lie, every manipulation, every part of the plan. He deserves to know the truth. I will. And you're going to get help. Therapy, something. Because what you did wasn't just cruel, Victoria. It was sick. Victoria nodded, tears streaming down her carefully made-up face. Morrison pulled up in front of a gleaming office building. 15th floor. Morgan and Associates. They took the elevator up in tense silence. Morrison flashed his badge at the receptionist. Caleb Sterling. Where is he? Conference room B. The receptionist pointed down the hall. But he's in a meeting. They were already moving. Morrison threw open the conference room door. Caleb sat at a long table, his lawyer beside him, papers spread out in front of them. He looked up in shock. What the hell is going on? Then his eyes landed on Sienna. The color drained from his face. You! What are you doing here? Saving your life, Sienna said quietly. Morrison stepped forward. Mr. Sterling, I'm Detective Morrison, NYPD. We have reason to believe you've been poisoned. We need to get you to a hospital immediately. Caleb laughed, but there was no humor in it. Poisoned. Is this some kind of joke? Elena Volkov confessed to dosing you with immunosuppressants this morning, Morrison said. We need to get them out of your system before. Elena didn't poison me. Elena's the only person who's been honest with me through all of this. Caleb stood, his face flushing with anger. This is insane. You're all insane. Caleb, please. Victoria stepped forward. Listen to them. He turned on her. And you. I should have known you'd be part of whatever scheme this is. What is it? Some twisted attempt to get me back. To punish me for moving on. She's trying to save you, Sienna said. We both are. Elena isn't who you think she is. And you are, the woman who gave me IV. Caleb's voice rose. I saw the test results, Sienna. I'm not an idiot. Those results were faked. Sienna pulled out her phone. Victoria helped Elena frame me. They manipulated your test. Made you think you were sick so Elena could swoop in and play the devoted girlfriend. That's absurd. Listen to the recording. Sienna played Elena's confession, her voice clear and cold. I already dosed him this morning. Put it in his coffee. The room went silent. Caleb's face cycled through emotions. Disbelief, confusion, horror. He sank back into his chair. That's not possible. Elena loves me. Elena is a con artist who's killed at least 2 other men for their money. Morrison said gently. And you were going to be next. Caleb looked at Sienna, really looked at her for the first time since she'd walked in. She saw the moment it hit him. The full weight of what he'd done, what he'd believed, what he'd destroyed. His voice broke. Sienna, we need to go. Morrison interrupted. Hospital. Now. We can sort everything else out later. They rushed Caleb to New York, Presbyterian, where a team was already waiting. As the doctors worked to flush the immunosuppressants from his system, Sienna sat in the waiting room next to Victoria, both women silent. Morrison joined them after an hour. He's going to be okay. They caught it in time. Sienna nodded, not trusting herself to speak. And Elena? Victoria asked. Being processed downtown. Between the wire recording and what we found in her storage unit, she's looking at multiple counts of murder, fraud, and attempted murder. Morrison sat down heavily. It's going to be a media circus. Good, Sienna said quietly. Let everyone know what she did. Let those other families get justice. A doctor emerged from the treatment room. He's asking for you. Both of you? Sienna and Victoria exchanged glances. You first? Victoria said. Sienna stood and followed the doctor into the room, where Caleb lay, an IV in his arm, his face pale against the white hospital sheets. When he saw her, tears started streaming down his face. Sienna. God. Sienna, I'm so sorry. Don't, she said softly. Not yet. She sat in the chair beside his bed, looking at the man she'd loved, the man who'd thrown her away, the man she'd just saved. And she realized something that made her heart ache. She didn't love him anymore. The man she'd married, or thought she'd married, had never really existed. He'd been a fantasy, a beautiful lie she'd told herself. The real Caleb was flawed, weak, willing to believe the worst of her without question. And while she didn't want him dead, she didn't want him back either. We need to talk, she said. All of us. You, me, Victoria, Detective Morrison. And you're going to hear the whole truth. Every ugly piece of it. Caleb nodded, fresh tears sliding down his face. Whatever you need. Whatever it takes. Sienna, please. I'll do anything to make this right. She looked at him. This broken billionaire. This man who'd had everything and thrown it away for a lie. I know you will, she said. And for the first time in weeks, she felt something like peace. The conference room at Detective Morrison's precinct felt nothing like the glamorous settings Sienna had grown accustomed to during her marriage. Grey walls, fluorescent lights, the faint smell of burnt coffee and old paperwork. Caleb sat across from her, looking smaller somehow, diminished. Victoria sat at the end of the table, her designer clothes looking out of place in the institutional setting. Morrison stood at the head of the table, a file folder in front of him. "Let's start from the beginning," he said. Over the next 3 hours, the truth spilled out like poison from a wound. Victoria went first, her voice steady despite the tears that occasionally broke through. She explained how Elena had approached her 6 months ago at a charity gala, the same gala where Caleb had introduced Elena to Sienna for the first time. "She knew everything about me," Victoria said, staring at her hands. "My marriage to Caleb, the infertility, the divorce." She said she understood what it felt like to be discarded by a man who'd promised forever. "And you believed her," Caleb said quietly. "I wanted to believe her. I was lonely and bitter and angry." Victoria finally looked up at him. She made it sound so simple. Just help her get rid of Sienna, and we'd both get what we deserved. I'd get revenge, she'd get security, and you'd get a fresh start with someone who wouldn't remind you of your failures. Jesus, Victoria. I know how it sounds." Her voice cracked. "I told myself Sienna would be fine. That she was young, talented, beautiful. She'd bounce back, find someone better. But the truth is, I didn't care if she did or not. I just wanted her to hurt the way I'd been hurting." Sienna sat perfectly still, listening to the woman who'd orchestrated her destruction explain it away, like a business transaction. Morrison pulled out a series of photographs. Elena Volkov spent 2 years planning this operation. She researched Caleb's finances, his habits, his weaknesses. She knew about his affair patterns because she'd studied every relationship he'd had since Victoria. He laid out the photos. Elena at various charity events, always in the background, always watching. Elena outside the Sterling mansion. Elena at Caleb's gym, his favorite restaurant, his office building. "She stalked me," Caleb breathed. "She hunted you," Morrison corrected. "You were the biggest target she'd ever gone after. 10 times wealthier than Hammond, 20 times more than Chen. But you had one obstacle the others didn't, a wife who actually loved you." The words hit like a slap. Caleb flinched. Morrison continued. "So she recruited Victoria to help remove that obstacle. The fake HIV test was elegant. It gave you a reason to hate Sienna, a reason to divorce her quickly with looking like you were just trading her in for a newer model." "But I'm not actually sick." Caleb's voice was small. "You weren't. You are now." Morrison's expression hardened. "Elena infected you deliberately 3 weeks ago, right after you filed for divorce. We found her medical records in her storage unit. She's been HIV positive for 4 years, likely contracted it from her first target. She's been using her status as a weapon ever since." The room went silent. "She gave it to me on purpose," Caleb whispered. "After everything, after I chose her, she never cared about you," Sienna said quietly. "You were just a paycheck, a very large paycheck." Morrison pulled out another document. "This is the will Elena had drafted for you, Mr. Sterling. She was going to present it to you this week. Claims she wanted to make sure she was taken care of if your illness got worse." Caleb read it, his face going grey. She gets everything. The company, the houses, the investments. Everything. And then you were going to have a tragic accident involving a gas leak in your study. We found the device she had installed, the timeline she'd planned. Another 6 weeks, and you would have been dead. Caleb put his head in his hands. I almost married her. She showed me rings last week, said she wanted to make our relationship official before I got too sick. She was accelerating the timeline, Morrison said. The email from the Hammond family spooked her. She knew she was running out of time. Sienna watched Caleb process this, watched him understand how thoroughly he'd been manipulated. Part of her felt satisfaction. He'd earned this pain, this humiliation. But another part, a part she didn't want to acknowledge, felt sorry for him.
Where is she now?
Caleb asked. Holding cell downtown. She's refused to speak without her lawyer. But it doesn't matter. We have enough evidence to put her away for life. Morrison gathered up the photos. But I need something from all of you. He looked at each of them in turn. Elena's lawyer is going to argue that she's the victim here. That she was manipulated by Victoria. That Caleb took advantage of her. That Sienna orchestrated this whole thing to get revenge. The media is already spinning stories. We need a united front. What do you mean? Victoria asked. I mean you all need to testify. At the trial, in depositions wherever needed. You need to tell the truth, even the parts that make you look bad. He looked at Victoria. Especially you. You conspired to commit fraud. You could go to jail. I know.
And you?
Morrison turned to Caleb. Your reputation is about to be destroyed. The affair, the divorce, falling for a con artist. Your business partners are going to have questions. Let them question, Caleb said quietly. I deserve whatever comes. Morrison nodded, then looked at Sienna. And you're going to be called a lot of names. Gold digger. Opportunist. People will say you only married him for money. That this whole thing was some elaborate scheme. Let them. Sienna's voice was steady. I know the truth. That's enough. Morrison studied her for a moment, then smiled slightly. You're tougher than you look, Miss Vance. I had to be. The meeting broke up an hour later. Victoria left first, her shoulders hunched, her usual confidence gone. Morrison followed, leaving Caleb and Sienna alone in the conference room. They sat in silence for a long moment. Finally, Caleb spoke. I don't expect you to forgive me. Good. I destroyed everything we had. Everything you gave me. And for what? For a woman who was planning to kill me. He laughed bitterly. I'm an idiot? You are. He looked up at her, surprised by her bluntness. You threw away 3 years of marriage because you were bored. Sienna continued. Because I wasn't exciting enough anymore. Because Elena made you feel young and dangerous and alive. That's not. Don't lie. Not now. Her voice was calm, clinical. You wanted out of our marriage. But you didn't want to be the bad guy. So when Victoria and Elena handed you the perfect excuse, you took it. You didn't even question it. You just believed the worst of me and ran. I'm sorry. Sorry doesn't fix this, Caleb. Sorry doesn't give me back the 3 years I spent building a life with someone who was looking for the exit the whole time. Tears streamed down his face. What can I do? How can I make this right? Sienna stood, gathering her purse. You can let me go. What? You can sign the divorce papers without contest. Give me a fair settlement, not because you feel guilty, but because I earned it. I gave up concert tours for you. I turned down opportunities to travel because you said you needed me here. I built my life around yours, and you threw it away. You can have whatever you want. The house, the money, everything. I don't want everything. I just want what's fair. She moved toward the door, then paused. And Caleb?
Yeah.
Get help. Real help. Therapy. Whatever it takes to figure out why you keep destroying the things you claim to love. She walked out without looking back. In the hallway, Morrison was waiting. You okay? I will be. For what it's worth. You handled that with a lot more grace than I would have. Sienna smiled slightly. That's because you've never been a black woman in America, detective. We learn grace early. It's survival. Morrison walked her to the elevator. What are you going to do now? I don't know. Maybe go back to performing. Maybe teach. She pressed the button for the ground floor. Whatever I do, it'll be for me. Not for someone else. The elevator doors opened. Sienna stepped inside. Ems Vance, Morrison called. She turned. If you ever need a reference, you call me. Anyone who can outmaneuver Elena Volkov and keep her cool doing it deserves whatever she wants in life. The doors closed on his smile. Sienna rode down alone, watching the floor numbers descend. When she emerged onto the street, the afternoon sun was bright and warm. People rushed past on their way to wherever they needed to be, oblivious to the fact that she'd just walked away from everything she'd known. Her phone buzzed. A text from Maya. Please tell me you're done with all this drama. Sienna smiled and typed back. Almost. Meet me at the apartment. I've already there with wine and ice cream. Make it tequila. That bad. That good. She hailed a cab and settled into the back seat. As they drove through Manhattan, Sienna caught her reflection in the window. She looked different. Older, maybe, but also stronger. The soft woman who'd planned that anniversary dinner was gone. She'd been burned away by betrayal and reborn into someone who understood that love without respect was just pretty chains. Her phone rang. An unknown number. She almost didn't answer, but something made her pick up. Ems Vance. This is Dr. Patricia Chen. Dr. Chen. Is everything okay? I wanted to follow up on your test results. I know you've been through a lot, but I wanted to confirm you're completely healthy. No HIV, no other infections. Whatever Caleb has, he didn't get it from you. I know. He got it from Elena. I heard. It's all over the news already. A pause. Sienna. I also wanted to say I'm proud of you. What you did. Stopping that woman. Saving Caleb. Even after what he did to you. That takes a rare kind of strength. I didn't do it for him. I did it because it was right. Even better. They said goodbye, and Sienna ended the call. The cab pulled up to Maya's building in Brooklyn. Sienna paid the driver and headed inside, climbing the stairs to the third-floor apartment that had become her refuge. Maya opened the door before she could knock, took one look at her face, and pulled her into a hug. Is it over? Maya asked. Not yet. There's still the trial, the divorce, the media circus. Sienna pulled back. But the worst part is over. The part where I didn't know who to trust or what was real. They settled on the couch with the tequila Maya had promised. The first shot burned going down. "So what now?" Maya asked. "You going to write a book? Go on talk shows? This is exactly the kind of story that goes viral." "God, no. I just want to be left alone." Too late for that. I saw 3 news vans outside Caleb's office today. And someone already made a TikTok about it. Billionaire's wife exposes murderous mistress. It has like 2 million views. Sienna groaned. "I hate the internet." "Yeah, but the internet loves you. You're trending on Twitter." "For justice for Sienna?" "Despite everything," Sienna laughed. "That's absurd. That's fame, baby." Maya poured them another shot. "But seriously, what's next? You can't just hide in my apartment forever." "Why not?" "Because you're Sienna Vance, world-class cellist, woman who took down a serial killer. You've got things to do." Sienna thought about that. About the cello gathering dust in storage. About the music she hadn't played in months because she'd been too busy trying to be the perfect wife. "I want to play again," she said quietly. "Not for audiences or critics or anyone else. Just for me. Then play." "It's not that simple. I'd need a space, time to practice, money to live on while I figure out what's next." "Caleb's giving you a settlement, right?" "Eventually. Once the lawyers finish fighting about it." Maya pulled out her laptop. "Then we'll figure it out. Because I'm not letting you give up on your music, just because some man broke your heart." They spent the next hour researching performance spaces, teacher positions, grant opportunities. Slowly, a plan began to form. Sienna would take the settlement when it came. Use part of it to open a music school in a neighborhood that needed one. Teach kids who couldn't afford private lessons. Play for the love of it instead of the prestige. Build something real. Something that couldn't be taken away. "You know what the best revenge is," Maya said, refilling their glasses. "Living well." "No, living authentically. Being so completely yourself that everyone who tried to destroy you has to watch you thrive." She raised her glass. "To Sienna Vance. May she never dim her light for anyone ever again." They clinked glasses and drank. Outside, the sun was setting over Brooklyn, painting the sky in shades of orange and gold. Tomorrow would bring new challenges. Reporters, lawyers, the trial. But tonight, for the first time in months, Sienna felt like herself. Not Caleb's wife, not a victim, not a woman scorned. Just Sienna, and that was enough. 6 months later, rain pattered against the windows of the Vance Music Academy, a converted brownstone in the 9th Ward of New Orleans. Sienna stood at the front of the classroom, watching 15 children, ages 8 to 16, practice their scales. The sound was imperfect, chaotic, beautiful. This was what freedom sounded like. "Ems, Vance." A small voice broke through her thoughts. Destiny, a 9-year-old with braids and gap-toothed smile, held up her violin. "I think my bow needs more rosin." Sienna crossed the room and examined the bow. "You're right. Good ear, Destiny. Always trust what you hear." She helped the girl apply more rosin, then stepped back to let her continue practicing. Through the window, she could see the oak trees lining the street, their branches heavy with Spanish moss. New Orleans had welcomed her with open arms, a city that understood reinvention, that celebrated survival. The trial had ended 3 weeks ago. Elena Volkov was sentenced to life without parole for the murders of Jeffrey Hammond and Marcus Chen, plus attempted murder of Caleb Sterling. The evidence had been overwhelming. The recordings, the documents from her storage unit, testimony from Victoria, and a parade of other witnesses. Elena had shown no remorse. Even as the verdict was read, she'd sat perfectly still, her blue eyes empty of everything except cold calculation. Victoria had been sentenced to 2 years in a minimum security facility for conspiracy to commit fraud. She'd cooperated fully with prosecutors, provided evidence, testified against Elena. The judge had been lenient because of her cooperation, but not forgiving. You allowed your bitterness to nearly cost a man his life. The judge had said, that requires consequences. Victoria had accepted the sentence with quiet dignity. Before she was led away, she'd found Sienna in the courthouse hallway. I hope someday you can forgive me, Victoria had said. Sienna had looked at the woman who'd orchestrated her destruction, who'd helped frame her, who'd nearly gotten Caleb killed. And she'd felt nothing. Not anger, not hatred, just a vast, empty distance. I don't need to forgive you, Sienna had said quietly. I just need to move on. Victoria had nodded, tears streaming down her face, and let the officers lead her away. Caleb had been at the trial every day, sitting in the back row. He'd testified when called, his voice breaking as he described how Elena had manipulated him, how he'd believed her lies about Sienna. The media had crucified him. Headlines screamed, Billionaire philus, fakiles, CEO muadin by Mistress. Sterling's stupidity almost cost him everything. His board of directors had forced him to step down as CEO. His business partnerships had dissolved. His social circle had abandoned him. He'd lost everything except his life and his money, and he'd tried to give both to Sienna. The divorce settlement had been generous, $15 million, the apartment in Manhattan, alimony for 5 years, more than fair. More than she'd expected. But it was the letter that had come with the settlement that had stayed with her. Sienna, no amount of money can undo what I did to you. No apology can repair the trust I shattered. I threw away the best thing in my life because I was bored, selfish, and stupid. I've started therapy. Real therapy. Not just the kind where you pay someone to tell you you're fine. I'm learning why I sabotage the things I claim to love, why I chase excitement over substance, why I'm fundamentally broken in ways I never wanted to acknowledge. I don't expect you to care. I don't expect forgiveness. I just wanted you to know that you changed me. Not our marriage. You. Your grace, your strength, the way you saved my life even after I destroyed yours. Sienna, I hope wherever you are, whatever you're doing, you're happy. You deserve every beautiful thing this world has to offer. I'm sorry I wasn't strong enough to be one of them. Caleb. Sienna had read it once, folded it carefully, and put it in a box with her other memories of that life. Not to cherish, just to remember who she'd been and who she'd become. She'd taken half the settlement money and opened the academy. The other half she'd invested, ensuring she'd never be dependent on anyone again. The first 3 months had been hard. Finding the building, hiring teachers, recruiting students from neighborhoods where music lessons were a luxury most families couldn't afford. But slowly, word had spread. Now she had a waiting list. Mems Vance, another voice. Marcus, a 15-year-old cellist with hands that could make magic out of strings. Can you show me that passage again? the one from the Dvorak. Sienna picked up her own cello, a beautiful instrument she'd bought for herself, not one gifted by a husband trying to buy her happiness. She played the passage, her fingers finding the notes like coming home. Marcus watched, his eyes wide, then tried it himself. Close. Not quite there yet, but he would be. Practice the transitions, she said. The magic isn't in the notes themselves. It's in the spaces between them. The door to the classroom opened. Maya stood there, holding 2 coffee cups and grinning. "Break time, kids," Maya announced. "Ems Vance needs caffeine." The students gratefully set down their instruments and headed for the break room, where snacks waited. Sienna took the coffee gratefully. "You're a lifesaver." "I know." Maya settled into a chair. "Also, you have a visitor." "If it's another reporter." "It's not." Maya's expression turned serious. "It's Caleb." Sienna's hand froze halfway to her mouth. "What?" "He's downstairs. Been standing outside in the rain for about 20 minutes, looking pathetic." Maya sipped her coffee. "I told him you probably wouldn't want to see him, but he said he'd wait as long as it took." Sienna set down her cup. Through the window, she could see a figure on the sidewalk below. Tall, broad-shouldered, head bowed against the rain. "What do you want to do?" Maya asked gently. Sienna thought about the last 6 months, the work she'd done to build this new life. The therapy sessions where she'd unpacked her own issues, her tendency to make herself small for men, her fear of being alone, her need for external validation. She'd learned that she didn't need Caleb's apology to heal. She'd already healed. But maybe he needed to give it. "Send him up," she said quietly. Maya raised an eyebrow. "You sure?" 5 minutes. "That's all he gets." Maya nodded and disappeared downstairs. Sienna stood at the window, watching the rain, trying to calm the anxiety rising in her chest. She'd imagined this moment, the confrontation, the things she'd say, the closure she'd demand. But now that it was here, she felt nothing. Just a mild curiosity about what he could possibly want. Footsteps on the stairs. The door opened. Caleb stepped into the classroom, and Sienna's breath caught. He looked different. Thinner, older. His hair was longer, touched with grey at the temples. He wore jeans and a simple sweater, no designer suit, no expensive watch. He looked like a man who'd been humbled by life. "Sienna?" His voice was soft. "Thank you for seeing me." She gestured to a chair. He sat. She remained standing, maintaining the power dynamic. "What do you want, Caleb?" "I wanted to see what you'd built. Maya told me about the academy." He looked around the room, at the instruments, the music stands, the photos of students on the walls. "It's beautiful, really beautiful." "It's mine, I can tell." He smiled slightly. "Everything about this place is you. The real you. Not the version you tried to be for me." Sienna crossed her arms. "You have 4 minutes left." He nodded, accepting the boundary. "I'm not here to ask for forgiveness or try to get you back. I know I don't deserve either." "Then why are you here?" "To tell you that you were right. About everything." He stood, moving to the window, careful to maintain distance. "I'm in therapy 3 times a week. I've been diagnosed with narcissistic personality traits, fear of intimacy, chronic dissatisfaction. Turns out I'm a textbook case of a man who self-sabotages. I could have told you that for free." He laughed softly. "Yeah, you did, actually. Multiple times. I just never listened. They stood in silence for a moment, rain drumming against the glass. I sold the company, Caleb said. Couldn't run it anymore anyway after the scandal. I'm using the money to fund a foundation, helps victims of financial fraud and domestic abuse. It's called the Sienna Vance Foundation. She stared at him. You did what? I asked your permission first. Called Maya last month. She said you probably wouldn't care what I named it, but I wanted you to know anyway. He turned to face her. Every person Elena hurt, every family Victoria's scheme affected, every woman who's been manipulated by someone they trusted, the foundation helps them. Legal fees, therapy, financial support. Whatever they need. Sienna felt tears prick her eyes. Caleb. I know it doesn't fix anything, but it's something. It's me trying to turn the worst thing I ever did into something that helps people. She studied his face, looking for the manipulation, the angle. But all she saw was sincerity. Broken, humble sincerity. How's your health? She asked quietly. Managed. The medications are working. I'll never be cured, but I can live with it. He smiled sadly. Ironic, right? Elena gave me exactly what she'd falsely accused you of giving me. The universe has a sick sense of humor. Have you dated anyone since? None. I don't trust myself yet. My therapist says I need at least another year of intensive work before I'm ready for any kind of relationship. He looked at her. What about you? I've been on a few dates. Nothing serious. She smiled slightly. Turns out I need to work on myself too. Figure out who I am when I'm not trying to be what someone else needs. You always knew who you were. I was the one who tried to make you smaller. The truth of it hung between them. Your 4 minutes are up, Sienna said gently. Caleb nodded. He moved toward the door, then paused. I see the way you look at these kids, the way you light up when they play. This is what you were always meant to do. I know. And I'm sorry I ever made you think being my wife was enough. You were always meant for more than that. He walked out before she could respond. Sienna stood alone in the classroom, listening to his footsteps fade down the stairs, the front door open and close. When she looked out the window, he was gone, disappeared into the rain-soaked streets of New Orleans. Maya appeared in the doorway. You okay? Yeah. Sienna wiped her eyes. Yet I am. What did he want? Forgiveness, I think. Or maybe just to see that I was happy. And are you happy? Sienna looked around the classroom, at the instruments waiting to be played, the music waiting to be made, the students waiting to learn. She thought about the life she'd built from the ashes of her marriage, the freedom she'd fought for, the strength she'd discovered. I'm getting there, she said. 3 weeks later, Sienna stood on stage at the New Orleans Jazz Festival. Maya had convinced her to perform just one piece, just to see how it felt to play for an audience again. The crowd was massive, stretching back into the darkness beyond the lights. Sienna settled her cello between her knees and closed her eyes. She thought about everything that had brought her here. The betrayal, the pain, the fight for truth, the destruction and the rebuilding. And then she played. Not Duva Vramak or Bach or any of the classical pieces that had defined her career. She played something she'd composed herself, a piece she'd written during the darkest days, after the divorce, when she'd thought she might never play again. It was called Phoenix. The music started soft, melancholy. The sound of loss, of grief. Then it built, layer upon layer, of complexity, pain transforming into power. The melody soared, fierce and free,